Hi everyone, I'm Shelly and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. I'm back with another video, and in this video I am going to share with you my thoughts on covenant creation. Now, first of all, I know that this topic is going to ruffle some feathers, even the feathers of those who agree with me about covenant eschatology, or full preterism as it's also known. But I think that it's something that I want to address, not coming from a place of being someone who knows everything there is to know about it. I am still very early in learning about covenant creation. I can't even 100% say at this point if I am fully on board with it. However, it does resound with me. And for that reason, I decided that, hey, I'm going to share with you those reasons. You might not even know what covenant creation is. So first of all, let me just say that there's a book by Tim Martin and Jeff Vaughn called Beyond Creation Science, New Covenant Creation from Genesis to Revelation. Now, Tim Martin, he has a YouTube channel, which I'll link in the description box. And there's also another channel called Ask the Pastor, and it's Steve Magwa. I hope that I said it wrong. I probably said his last name wrong, but I'll link that too. And they both have really good videos on covenant creation in which they explain things in a very clear, matter-of-fact way. Tim Martin, as a matter of fact, I know that he has a course on covenant creation, which I started watching, still haven't finished yet, which is why I'm not going to be going really deeply into covenant creation at this point, because I don't know enough about it yet. I'm just sharing it with you so that you can understand, in case you would want to look into it. And also, again, because I think that it does have a lot of valid points that people might not like to think about. Right now, I'm sure there's some of you who are watching who are thinking, what even is covenant creation? Well, I'm going to share with you just some of an article. I'm not sure how much of it I'm going to read, but this will give you a good overview of what covenant creation is before I can get into my reasons for deciding to, give this a little bit of research, because again, I do find a lot of validity in what they are saying. I don't know everything about it. If you have all kinds of questions about it, I would suggest you go to their channels and direct your questions to them, because I don't know a whole lot. But here is what covenant creation is. What is covenant creation? Preterists recognize that the end spoken of in prophecy is not the end of the physical world. Rather, it is the end of the old covenant, the end of the old creation, the passing away of the first heaven and first earth. And that's from Revelation 21:1. We call this covenant eschatology. Covenant creation views the original heavens and earth, which God made in the beginning, that's Genesis 1:1, as directly related to God's creation of the new heaven and new earth of Revelation 21:1. If the end spoken of in prophecy is the end of the old covenant order and has nothing to do with the end of the physical universe, then we think it is time to ask some very important questions. Does the biblical beginning match the biblical end? When did God introduce the Old Covenant order? Could Genesis creation speak about the beginning of the covenant world of God's relationship to his people rather than the beginning of the physical universe? Why would the Bible open with an account of the creation of the physical universe and then change subjects completely to close with prophecy of a covenant end? These are difficult questions, but reflect on the current scenario for a moment. Preterism is, by its very nature, the outright rejection of the belief that prophecy speaks about the end of the physical world. At the same time, preterists have assumed Genesis creation is a literal statement about the origin of the physical world. Do you realize what that means? It means that most preterists have viewed the central subject of creation in the beginning as completely different from the central subject of prophecy and the end. Is it possible that preterists have yet to explore the full implications of preterism in the first chapters of Genesis? Advocates of covenant creation suggest that it is time to self-consciously rethink Genesis creation according to preterist principles. Covenant eschatology challenges all common eschatological views because they view the end in terms of the physical world. Likewise, covenant creation challenges all common creation views because they view the beginning in terms of the physical world. The principles covenant eschatology applies to the end are the same principles that covenant creation applies to the beginning. Covenant creation and covenant eschatology match. So I'm going to link this in the description for anybody who would like to read this. It's a very, very good article. But what this gets into is that the Genesis account that so many people look at as a physical account of the creation of the world is actually, or may actually be, an account of a covenant creation between God and his people. Okay? So, hopefully that gave you enough information to understand what this is about. But here's where I'm coming from. So, covenant creation, I didn't even know that it existed for a while, but even before I knew that it existed, I was starting to have some difficulty understanding some things as I was coming to, grow in my knowledge of the way that Hebraic idioms are used and what fulfilled prophecy is, what fulfilled eschatology is. I started to think to myself, well, how am I supposed to understand the difference between when it says heavens and earth? How do I know when it's talking about, covenants? And how do I know when it is talking about the physical, biological creation? And actually, I think that that's a question that I asked Mike Sullivan when I interviewed him on my channel maybe a year or two ago. I asked him, even then, I was already confused. I'm like, I still don't understand when to tell the difference. And honestly, I don't remember what his reply was to me. I would have to go back and watch that video. But even then, I was wrestling with that. Because to me, Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I'm just thinking, okay, that's obviously the creation account of the world. But then it seemed like almost every other reference to heavens and earth throughout Scripture was referring to man's relationship with God. So here we have in Isaiah 65, a lot of people understand this part, for behold, I create new heavens and a new earth. And a lot of people seem to think that that's talking about a physical new heavens and a new earth. Now, if you actually read prior to that, a lot of people will start there because it's talking about the new heavens and the new earth, and then they can start talking about utopias and paradise on earth and all those sorts of things. But if you actually read the entire passage before it, it's talking about how God was going to destroy the old heavens and earth because they were disobedient to him, and he was going to create a new heavens and a new earth. And the entire passage is just talking about how he is going to, I'll just give you an example. You who forsake the Lord, who forget my holy mountain, who set a table for fortune and fill cups of mixed wine for destiny, I will destine you to the sword, and all of you shall bow down to the slaughter. Because when I called, you did not answer. When I spoke, you did not listen, but you did what was evil in my eyes, and chose what I did not delight in. Therefore, thus says the Lord God, behold, my servants shall eat, but you shall be hungry. He's talking the old covenant Israel here. Behold, my servants shall drink, but you shall be thirsty. So notice, it's not old covenant Israel who are his servants. Who are his servants then? I guess that would be the believers in the new covenant. But anyway, behold, my servants shall rejoice, but you shall be put to shame. Behold, my servants shall sing for gladness of heart, but you shall cry out for pain of heart, and shall wail for breaking of spirit. You shall leave your name to my chosen for a curse, and the Lord God will put you to death, but his servants he will call by another name, so that he blesses himself in the land, shall bless himself by the God of truth, and he who takes an oath in the land shall swear by the God of truth, because the former troubles are forgotten and are hidden from from my eyes. For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former things shall not be remembered or come into mind. So if you read this seamlessly without this little interjection that the biblical translators like to put in there, if you just read it seamlessly, you will see that it is talking about the transition from the old way of doing things to the new way of doing things, from the old heaven and earth to the new heavens and earth. So this is talking about the covenant. So next we have Revelation 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. Now, for those people who are coming from a futurist mindset, again, just like with Isaiah 65, they will probably say, no, that's actually talking about a physical new heaven and earth. But for those of us who understand the Hebraic idiom, heaven and earth, we also know this is referring to the passing of the old covenant. The first heaven and earth had passed away. The entire book of Hebrews is about the passing of that old covenant. And the new heaven and new earth then is the new covenant. In fact, in Hebrews 8:13, it says, in speaking of a new covenant, he makes the first one obsolete, and what is becoming obsolete and growing old is ready to vanish away. And that's what happened here. The first heaven and the earth had passed away. So this is talking about covenants, once again, when it comes to the term heavens and earth. So hopefully you can see why I was just having issues, because I'm like, most of the time, heavens and earth seems to be referring to covenants and not really physical things. So that was one question that I had that covenant creation does answer. Another question I had was, why in the beginning Genesis would be about the creation of the world and the cosmos, while Revelation is about the destruction of Israel via Jerusalem. And so Jerusalem was the hub of Old Covenant Israel. So for me, I was just thinking to myself, why is the beginning not like the end? The beginning is about the creation of the physical world, but then the end is about only the end of the Old Covenant age in, one specific land. Now, obviously, the New Covenant was ushered in, but to me, they just didn't seem to match. Okay, so if you think of it this way, in Genesis, you can look at these things, well, you can look at them more ways than this, but these are the ways that make sense if you are going to be consistent in your views of the beginning from the end, at least in my opinion. So you can either look at Genesis as the creation of the world, and then you could look at Revelation as the destruction of the world, because most people will acknowledge that the Bible has a consistent thread that just seamlessly goes through the entire thing, ties everything beautifully together. So it would seem that if Genesis starts off with the creation of the physical world, then Revelation would end with the destruction of the physical world. And then conversely, if Genesis would start with covenant creation, then it would end with covenant creation. It doesn't seem like the combination of both would work. And here's why. At least these are my thoughts. I love to write. I don't write much anymore, but I love to write. And as a writer, there are some things that I know. There are some things that probably even people who don't like to write know. Is that I originally wrote down here a good essay, but any piece of good writing, okay, will have an introduction, it will have a body, and then there will be a conclusion. It's very basic 3 things that they would have. And the thing is that what is in the introduction and the body and the conclusion should flow seamlessly. So if we combine the 2 ideas, the introduction, like a physical creation of the earth, wouldn't fit the body or the conclusion, because what is the rest of the Bible about? The rest of the Bible really focuses on covenants and our redemption through Christ. So that's the Bible is a book of covenants. So, and even if you look at Genesis, you know, we talk about Old Covenant and New Covenant a lot. There's more than 2 covenants. There's more than the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. And if you notice, 3 of them alone are mentioned in Genesis. So my question was, I know I'm stumbling a lot, but this is just because I'm sharing with you my thoughts on something. Why would the very beginning, be about something completely unrelated to the rest of even the book of Genesis? You know, the rest of the book of Genesis, it focuses on God's covenantal relationships with man and the history of those covenant people. You know, that's what it focuses on. Completely down from Adam. It focuses on Adam's lineage all the way up through Christ. You know, that's, at least in my opinion, that's what it does. So this is a good breakdown of the different covenants. I don't really like the way that he broke down the conditions of the new covenant, though. I actually don't agree completely with this. And I don't like the way that he said eat his body and drink his blood. I think it's a little strange way to put it. But anyway, this at least shows you that there are more than 2 covenants, and the Bible is about covenants. So going back to the essay analogy. So the introduction of an essay or research paper or whatever will tell you what is going to be discussed, what this is about. The body will then include all of those details about what the main idea is of this writing. And then the conclusion is just the wrap up of everything that has already been written. And if the conclusion is different from the introduction in material, in topics, in details, then if you're a teacher, you're not going to give that paper a very good grade, because the introduction and the conclusion, they should match up. Now, hopefully you've stuck around long enough for this, because this is where I think it really gets interesting. So if you go to Genesis chapter 2, we'll read verse 1. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. Okay, so are we thinking of this in physical terms or in covenantal terms? This is talking about a covenant and all the host of them. Well, if you go to Strong's, to the Hebrew, okay, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. If you go to the Hebrews, it doesn't even say host here. It says their vast array, but that's just, you'll see when we click on Strong's that it still means hosts, okay? Let's look at what hosts means. Hosts is a mass of persons, a mass of things, regularly organized for war, by implication, literally or figuratively, hardship or worship, okay? And then if you would go here to the concordance here, it tells you all the different places where this word, which is Saba, is used in Genesis. You will see that there is only one time that it seems to be used for something not meaning people. So all of these, it'll say army, it's all about army and hosts and out to war. You can actually come here. I always leave all these links in the description, so you can check that out. So every time, other than Genesis 2:1, it is used for something that is a person, okay? Whereas here again, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. All right. Next, we will go to verse 4. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created, in the day that the Lord God made the heavens and the earth. All right, so if we are talking about the creation of the heavens and the earth, what does that mean? These are the generations of the physical heavens and earth. And you could be thinking, okay, well, that could be the history of the physical heavens and earth. It could be. But how well does that match up with the word that is used for generations? Let's just check that out. And also the phrase, these are the generations of, okay? If you go once again to the Hebrew, in this one, they translate it as account. This is the account of the heavens and earth. But let's go to Strong's. This is 8435. It's Toledah. All right. Descent, like family. Figuratively, it means history, right? But down here, it means from Yalad, descent, family, figuratively, history, as in birth and generations. So according to this, it seems when it's referring to history, it's still referring to birth and generations. This is talking about genealogical history. All right. Can the heavens and the earth, physical heavens and earth, have a genealogy? Can they have genealogical records? Here's another interesting thing. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth. Every single other time that this phrase is used, it is talking about generations of man. So here we have in 5:1 the generations of Adam, Genesis 6:9, the generations of Noah, Genesis 10:1, the generations of Shem, 10:32, after their generations in their nations. Well, that wasn't, these are the generations of Genesis 11:10. These are the generations of Shem. That again. 11:27, the generations of Terah, the generations of Ishmael. These are the generations of Isaac, the generations of Esau. So hopefully you can see that every other time it is referring to the lineage of people. That is the only time that it is used of something that someone might consider to be not people. So my question is, when it says these are the generations of the heavens and the earth, could it mean these are the generations of the covenant people? This is their history. You know how it can mean history as in birth and generations. Is this telling the history of God's covenant people? Could that be what is meant by heavens and earth here? It's just a question that I have, and I think that it's a valid one. Also, let's go next to Genesis 7. All right. Here it says, starting with verse 2, take with you 7 pairs of all clean animals, the male and his mate, and a pair of the animals that are not clean, the male and his mate. And I'm just going to stop there. And again, I'll link this in the description if you want to read it for context, or you can just look up Genesis 7 in your own Bible. I actually have been reading through Genesis. I'm reading through Genesis and Romans right now. And this was what started the whole thing. Because as I was reading Genesis 7:2, I thought to myself, his female? Because I have the NASB 1995, and it said a male and his female. And I'm thinking to myself, these are supposed to be animals? That seems a little weird to be saying his female about an animal. You know, because it almost sounds like this is a monogamous relationship that this animal is in. All right. So I went to the Hebrew. And it reminded me that a few months back, I watched a video, I think by Steve Magwa, where he did mention something like this. Now, sometimes it's also translated as mate. What does this word mean? It's Isha. All right. Now, this word Isha, that apparently in this verse is referring to an animal. It means, that's interesting, adulteress. I looked through all of these instances of Isha being used and never saw it translated as adulteress. But anyway, I might have missed it. But anyway, it says, each, every, female, together. Oh, sorry, I'm reading the KJV. There we go. Each, every, female, many, none, one, together. All right. And you're probably thinking, okay, well, that's fine. Well, it means mainly woman, wife, female. All right. And so here are many other different translations for this. Now, this is where, like with it said, these are the generations of, I decided, all right, let's see how Isha is used in other parts of the Bible. Well, in Genesis 2:22, Isha is used for Eve, and woman is called Eve. Genesis 2:24, it's used as wife. Genesis 2:25, it's wife. And I'm thinking, so just keep scrolling. It's woman, 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 wife, woman, 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 wife, 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 wife. I'm not going to keep reading all of them, but hopefully you can see or you can look for yourself. And you just keep going and going and going, and you will not come to something other than woman or wife until you come to this passage here, where it is apparently referring to an animal. So, if you would be consistent with this translation and translate it as all of the other uses of it are. By the way, I looked it up. There's like 752 instances. Oh, I can't believe I didn't send this to myself so I could share it with you. Actually, I can just do that now. Okay. Here is this word Isha that is translated as mate or female in chapter 7, in 2 verses in chapter 7 when it is talking about animals. So there are 781 occurrences of the word Isha. So I decided to look up how many of those times it was used as female. In the King James Version, I'm sure that's the same with other versions as well, the Hebrew word Isha is translated as female twice, while it is translated as wife 425 times and woman 324 times. So once again, just as with generations being, well, some of them translated as account, generations is thought of, oh, well, that's referring to the physical earth. Could it be that the translators translated this in a certain way, not using wife or woman, because, it wouldn't make sense for an animal to have a wife or, a woman. So in other words, it would say, take with you 7 pairs of all clean animals, the male and his wife, and a pair of the animals that are not clean, the male and his wife. Or it could say the male and his woman. All right. Well, that reminds me of Acts chapter 10. Let's read verses 9 through 16. The next day, as they were on their journey and approaching the city, Peter went up on the housetop about the 6th hour to pray. And he became hungry and wanted something to eat. But while they were preparing it, he fell into a trance and saw the heavens opened and something like a great sheet descending, being let down by its 4 corners upon the earth. In it were all kinds of animals and reptiles and birds of the air. And there came a voice to him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. But Peter said, By no means, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. And the voice came to him again a second time, What God has made clean, do not call common. This happened 3 times, and the thing was taken up at once to heaven. Now, if we go down to verse 28, it says, And he said to them, You yourselves know how unlawful it is for a Jew to associate with or to visit anyone of another nation. But God has shown me that I should not call any person common or unclean. So this would, in Genesis, would not be the only time that people were referred to as animals, especially when you look at these categories of animals too. And I think it depends. I didn't look at this in the Greek. But if you look at the categories of animals, it's the exact same categories that were used in the Genesis account. Okay, and this isn't even the only place. In Hosea 2 as well. I forgot to pull this one up. But in Hosea 2, Let's go to a different translation here. All right. Hosea 2 says, "And I will make for them a covenant on that day with the beasts of the field, the birds of the heavens, and the creeping things of the ground." And you have to think to yourself, is God making a covenant with animals? Or could this be another example of Gentiles being referred to as the beasts of the field, the birds of the heavens, the creeping things of the ground, as in Acts chapter 10. And if you aren't sure that that's what this is talking about, maybe you're saying, oh, well, this is talking about actual animals. Well, if you go down here, "And in that day I will answer, declares the Lord. I will answer the heavens, and they shall answer the earth, and the earth shall answer the grain, the wine, and the oil, and they shall answer Jezreel. And I will sow her for myself in the land, and I will have mercy on no mercy. And I will say to not my people, you are my people, and he shall say, you are my God." Now, there are two references to this verse in the New Testament. I know that one is in Romans. I think the other one is in Hebrews, where this section, "I will have mercy on no mercy, and I will say to not my people, you are my people." So, in my opinion, when it says that he's going to make a covenant with these animals, he's referring to the ones that were called not my people, aka the Gentiles. Same as in Acts 10, when those animals were called, when the Gentiles were called animals. So, is it the same situation in Genesis 7? I think that it's, at least worth thinking about or looking into. Additionally, I just wanted to show you, I know this is going long, but, oh no, we're not on Genesis 2 anymore. Did I lose Genesis 7? Oh, here it is. Okay, let's just go back to the chapter, because I just wanted to show you. So I just wanted to show you that here in Genesis 7:3, we have the word female again. All right. "And 7 pairs of the birds of the heavens also, male and female, to keep their offspring alive on the face of all the earth." Now, this time, if you go to the Hebrew, you will see that it's not Isha that's used for female. It is the word Nekeba. All right. So my point, and if you go down here in all the instances of Nekeba, it is translated as female. Like, look at all these instances: female, female, female. Here it's women, and here, well, that's the same one. And here it's woman. We have all these other instances of this being translated as female, and then we have Isha, which the only time it is ever translated as female is just in the verse regarding the animals. So, yeah, that's my question then. Is it because it was referring to people who were possibly not of the covenant, and those who were not my people were referred to in the language of animals? So, hopefully I didn't confuse you too much today, but definitely check out Tim Martin's channel. Again, remember, I'm not 100% sold on this. I know even friends of mine who are like, what are you talking about? But I think that it's worth looking into. And, I think it's worth listening to their videos. Again, I don't know a whole lot about it. So if you have really deep questions about it, ask them. And who knows, I know that sometimes Tim will watch my videos and comment. So Tim, if you're listening, I would love if you would reply to anyone who has questions here. And also, Tim, if I got anything wrong, let me know. So anyway, that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one down below. And if you like my work and would like to become a channel member, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. Or you can just click on it right on my channel page. And I hope you have a great day.